All right, so we are in Photoshop. I have just dragged and dropped my EPS into an 8 by 10 by 350 pixel per inch white canvas. And then I sized it without distorting it just to look good, as though the black shape around the white rectangle is my mat, right? And now all I have to do is hit return. Once I'm in Photoshop, hit return, and that places my smart object. Now, if you remember from our first few projects in compositing, a smart object cannot be edited. So if I try to erase it, it won't let it. So this smart object is tagged to my vector, which means that right now it's perfectly clean within this resolution. It's the best it can be within this pixel grid. But if I all of a sudden change this resolution, image size, and I change it to be 80 inches by 100 inches by 350 pixels per inch. That's a huge file. It's a 2.74 gig file. It would be perfectly clean. I'll just do 30 by 40. Then it's 394 megabytes, when right now it's only 28 megabytes. And I say, okay. Now you see that it's still perfectly clean at whatever the resolution is, because it's a vector. And so I can only see pixels if I zoom in at 600%. Right? So keeping your vector as a smart object is the whole point. So that it can be clean at any size you want to output it at. Now, how do I turn it in? Well, a black shape logo in black is pretty versatile, except on a black background. So if I duplicate my white background and then I fill it with black, somehow I can't see my logo anymore. If I duplicate that black background and then fill it with middle gray, if I can get my symbol to look good on all three of these backgrounds, so something we'll be working with the next few projects, then it can work on any color background, any t-shirt, any website background, any kind of marketing materials. So right now it looks good on gray, it looks good on white, it doesn't show up at all on black. So how can I fix that? I can double click it on the layer body here to open up its layer styles. We last did this when we were playing with our exercise 2 emoji and we wanted to add like texture or gradations. Those were vector shapes, right? We have all these options here. The only one I'm going to use is stroke, because a stroke as a layer style is similar but slightly different and slightly better than the stroke options you have in Adobe Illustrator. For the stroke, I have to click on it. I can pick the size and I can pick the color. I'm going to pick white, right? And then I can choose whether it's on the outside, and I can choose the size of it. Now that looks pretty good, except for around the snake's eyes. That looks weird. So I can also change it where it's not on the outside, it's on the inside. But now it makes everything look too skinny. So I can also change it so that it's at the center, which is the only option Illustrator gives you. And then I can pick the size. This is what's called an offset. It helps us to see the image even on a dark background. So now, does it look good on gray? Yes. Does it look good on black? We can still see it, right? It's still there. And does it look good on white? It looks the exact same on white. Now notice that that layer style is also a vector, because it's linked to the smart object that is a vector. That's important. So if I'm going to turn this in now, I'm going to turn off all the backgrounds. So I just have a blank checkerboard. And I might decide, even though it's going to look a little bit better, just a little bit off to the right there. So it's more visually centered, right? And now I'm going to save it. First, I will save it as my PSD. You know, my Karl assignment 4 black shape vector. And I'll save it to the desktop, just so I know where it's going. Next, I want to put it up to Canvas, so I have to save it as an online format, right, as a raster format. So I save a copy, and I'm going to choose PNG because I have all my background turned off, and this is a floating symbol, right? So when I check this, there's my PNG, and I open it up. You can see how now the offset shows, and it's just showing on the gray background because that's the default background for opening something in preview. Now I can go to Canvas. I can go to the project under Assignments, Assignment 4, and this is my second requirement. My first requirement is my refined black shape sketch. My second requirement is the black shape logo, right? So there's my sketch. Edit it. Requirement number 2. I just label these for your benefit so you make sure you have each requirement in order to get full points. So black shape logo with white stroke offset saved without a background as a PNG. And hopefully all of that makes sense to you. And then I post it. Did it from the desktop. It says PNG. I mark it orange. Mark this green. That's my PSD, my working format. And what we just did is not only use a vector as a smart object, but we formatted it. We made it print ready by bringing it in at the right resolution and then adding an offset. So I have a third requirement now, and that is to add color. Color variation. Now you can do color paths, you can do color strokes all in Illustrator. You can even add gradients in Illustrator. But I'm going to show you how to do it as a smart object in Photoshop, in a raster program. So what I'm going to do is hit Command J, duplicate that black logo. And now I'm going to play with those effects, and I'm going to turn that gray background on because that's a nice background to have when choosing color. I'm going to double click on the effects. I'll keep the stroke there, but I'm going to play with color overlay first. And so when I click on color overlay, I'm going to just set it to normal, 100%. And if I choose a color, it will fill my logo with that color. So what do I want? You know, maybe I want a blue, maybe I want a darker blue. Maybe I want a slightly grayer, darker blue. Maybe like that. And that could be a color variation. But if I want to do more with it, I can try a gradient instead of a color overlay. So gradients, these are lots of fun to play with. We have lots of options. Right? I'm going to just pick something pretty wild here to start with. There we go. This is what's called a radial gradient. I'm going to set that to be linear. So you basically play with all of these options. You're not going to hurt your design playing with these. And if I want to customize that gradient, I can customize it just by clicking on it and actually changing the colors. So if I want red, white, and blue, I could play with that. And I can play with where it goes. And I can even play with its angle. And I can even add a new one just to soften it a little bit. And then extend it. It's very patriotic. And then I can play, like I said, with the angle, kind of like that. And then I can reverse it, just see what I like. And then I can actually play with the scale of the gradient. All right. So now, if I like that gradient, but I think it's a little too extreme, I can put a color overlay over the top of it, but then I can take the opacity down on my color overlay to tint it, right? And get a really sophisticated kind of almost chrome effect with the blue and the red. And then what I really like to do, this is all perfectly smooth, very digital, right, color that I have a lot of control of. That's all based on the vector. But I can set it to dissolve mode, and dissolve mode will break it up pixel by pixel and give me this nice texturing in the color. So that's usually what I like to do. There are lots of other things I can do. I can add a drop shadow. That drop shadow I can make nice and dark and make it bigger and make it a little bit more distanced and at an angle similar to the gradient. So you see, has that. And I can play with that being noisy or being clean. I think I want that to be clean. I can play with outer glow. I can play with inner glow. I can play with texturing with bevel and emboss. Kind of add 3D effects to it. All these things are options for coloring. But then once you're happy with it, what do? You turn off your backgrounds. It should look good on all backgrounds, right? So that looks good on black, looks good on gray, should look good on white. Right? And because I have the drop shadow with a stroke, now that stroke is part of all of them. All based on the vector. And now I turn that white off, and I'm going to save it as a PNG, but first I'll save it as my PSD, just file save. Now it has options for both the color logo, or color symbol, and the black symbol, all in one place. They're both still smart objects. What if I wanted the eyes to be a different color than everything else? Well, this is what I can do. I can just select around those and then duplicate, Command J. Now when you duplicate, they are no longer a vector, but they're rasterized at exactly the resolution of everything else for this size. And now I can just change these effects very easily. I might turn the stroke off, I'll leave the drop shadow, turn the gradient. I'm just going to change the color overlay. And I'm just going to make it gold. Right. And then if I put the gradient behind it, I'm just going to change the, I'm going to try this, this will be crazy, the radial, and play with the scale of it. The opacity. Just give a little bit of glint to those golden eyes. I'm going to make the color overlay a little bit more opaque. There we go. So that's how you can color and divide up certain shapes within your overall shape as well. All right, then to save it, we say File, to put onto Canvas, we say Save a Copy, and we save it not as our black shape vector anymore, but this time as our color shape vector. You have to change the name for this PNG so it doesn't overwrite your black PNG. You want both. And that's a little gaudy. I'm not super fond of that one, but I've got the other options already built in. And in fact, I can always edit them. So I'm going to change the color overlay to being just a little bit more opaque here, make this subtle. And now I'm going to save that as my PSD and then save a copy. I'm going to say, call this color 2, because I can output as many versions as I want as PNGs, free floating, because I'm doing it from my vector smart objects. And you can see them all there. And I choose the one I like the most, which I think is going to be this one. I like that better than this one. And I like that better than just the black on its own. So playing with those layer styles, it's simple to do, but you have so many options, it's hard to kind of choose